Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Talks. I am Iftikhar Ahmed, the host of Tuesday Talks and the editor of the digital art newspaper Abir Pothi. In Tuesday Talks, we have people related to various kinds of art in any capacity to share with us the insights and enlighten us with the knowledge and experience they have in their area. Today, we have Dr. Samahak with us. She is the director of Sushma Swaraj Institute of Foreign Services, Ministry of External Affairs, and she has joined us today to talk about Tantric art in terms of Buddhism. She has her PhD on Prasad, Phimai, an esoteric Buddhist Khmer temple in Thailand from 11th to 13th century CE. To everyone who is new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe to Abir Pothi on YouTube. And now let's welcome Dr. Sama. Hello, Dr. Sama. How are you?
I think a round of thanks is the best way to begin with. I'm very thankful to you for today's interactions and for even a really good job in promoting visual arts of all kinds, not just limited to India, but art formats from various parts and on a global tangent. So more thanks to you than to me. Yeah.
As we are already running short of time, so I directly jump to the question, and that is, how does Tantric art manifest within the context of Buddhism, and what are its main characteristics? If you could just tell us.
So, as you know, Buddhism, when you situate it within the context of India, it is very dense and it is very deep. And historically, it runs very very deep. But when we come to tantric art, we are looking at a specialized branch. We're looking at an aspect of Buddhism that is focusing on three M's. This is what we talk about it while we're talking on subjects of Buddhist art and philosophy. The three M's of tantric art: mantra, mudra, and mandalas. So these three M's are very important, not only to define, to understand tantric art, tantric Buddhist art, if I may say, but also these are means to practice tantric Buddhist art: mantra, mudra, and mandala. So, to further, explain myself and to answer what you're saying, uh, mantra, as we all know, it is a means to practice a deity. This is an oral resonance. This is something we chant, right? So the moment we start chanting, a certain power is ascribed to the mantra. Second part of tantric art is mudra, hand gestures. We have Abhay Mudra, Varad Mudra, Dharmchak Mudra. These are some very basic mudras of Buddhist art associated with Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and deities. But as we move towards a more esoteric aspect, the mudras also become complicated. If we can go back to understanding the third M of Tantric Buddhist art, we're looking at mandalas, which are specific zones where the deities reside. And we all know that mandalas are these networks of concentric squares and circles, and it's how a ground is raised. So the final process of initiation, from initiation to final worship, ends with mandala. So a deity is placed in the center of the mandala, and the practitioner has to enter from the outer squares or subsets of circles, and then you have to keep moving inside. Now when I say you have to move inside, it's very much like a game. You have to work your way through it. There will be obstacles and hurdles, and you have to work your way through your mind, through meditation. And your mudra is perhaps your, if it is a game, then it is a weapon that you're using in order to kill your enemies, find a more stable ground to enter a new territory. And so that's how the mandala system is created. And the reason I'm giving you a gaming analogy is because in around Korea and Japan, a lot of games are being produced, almost collating the mandala environment. So in a Buddhist mandala, there is a deity, and then there are also bad elements, and as a practitioner you have to enter the mandala and play the game. So it's again a very interesting way of looking at traditional versus contemporary and different, like a meta universe. So yeah, so the three M's of tantric Buddhist art are very important to know what is tantra. Yeah.
And could you throw some light on the historical development of Tantric art in Buddhist traditions and also the significance within those contexts?
Yeah. So when we talk about history, Buddhist history, especially we think of Ashoka. Of course, Buddha's life is paramount, but post that we're looking at the different Buddhist councils, the time and place 100 years after Buddha's demise, where councils are called for, and they're sitting down and thinking about now what is a way forward. Buddha has preached that, Buddha Dharma Sangh, these are the three basic tenets of Buddhism. But after his demise, there is a lot of confusion, there is a lot of sectarianism, and that is a very tangential part of Buddhist history in which you get to see cracks in a methodology, cracks in the basic Buddhist philosophy. And those cracks, in a very paradoxical way, they have helped in consolidating Buddhism further. So, we all know of Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana Buddhism, right? We know that these are three branches or vehicles of Buddhism. So, historically, if we have to talk about it, I will approach it from the point of view of the presence of certain texts. One of the earliest Tantric Buddhist texts is called the Pragya Paramita Sutra. Now, it's a Mahayana text as well as it's a Tantric text. And one of the earliest texts, which is this Pragya Paramita Sutra, is found around 2nd century CE. And from there on, we are moving on to literally jumping onto around 5th, 6th century, around post Gupta and Gupta and post Gupta era, wherein all of a sudden there is a great focus on Tantrism. So in between this patch, there is a lot of efflorescence of Mahayana Buddhism, which is looking at, Theravada Buddhism is focusing on uh, a priest or a monk trying to attain enlightenment. Mahayana Buddhism is looking at, if you are aware of the concept of bodhisattvas. So Mahayana Buddhism is looking at how through good actions you can attain enlightenment, and not just, you don't have to leave your world behind. You don't have to leave your material world behind. You can still be married. You can still have a business. You can still be someone's under someone or an apprentice, have children, have wealth, and still do good actions, which is also known as upaya kaushalya, skillful means. Through good actions you can attain enough merit, and then you can attain enlightenment as well. So that was the crux of Mahayana, and that's why it was the most popular phase of Buddhism. And hence, from 2nd century to 6th century, you see, this large span of Mahayana Buddhist follower. But around that time, interestingly, Hinduism is also a Brahmanical practice, if I may have to, more proper about it. So these are equally gaining footing. Gupta period, as you know, I mean, Guptas were great, practitioners of Brahmanical traditions. So during this time, Shaivism is rising, and Tantric Shaivism and Tantric Buddhism are almost like two horses who are, going ahead with great speed at the same time. And there is a lot of intermingling of traditions at this time. Tantra, in a word, it means the weaving of teachings. So there is Shaivite Tantra, there is Buddhist Tantra. And if you have to look at the core values of the tantric teachings in both the tradition, it's more or less the same. In fact, Buddhism has also, in a way, borrowed some deities from Tantric Shaivism into its fold, and then has changed the identity of these deities. And this has been a great debate, that should we call it borrowing, or should we call it rather like forcefully taking. But the debate goes both ways. Anyways, so 6th century onwards is where you see a major shift in tantric Buddhist practices. Shiva is entering Buddhism, Ganesh has come, Parvati is already there. So all of these aspects are greatly enriching Buddhism. And this is the time when Orissa, Bihar, Bengal is becoming really stronger vis-a-vis their monastic settlements. The kings are, paying a lot of attention to Buddhist learnings and teaching. And there is always, the idea of putting in something esoteric and magical into religion gives it more footing, right? So,
Hmm.
so if you have to have a map, a map of ancient India and parts of Asia, 6th century is your place, is your dot. When from east of India we have um teachers and monks who are traveling from India to Tibet to Nepal to China to even Sumatra and Java. So that is our, basic. If you have to look at the historiography of Tantric Buddhist movement, then 6th century onwards is where the
So let's talk about some key symbols and motifs commonly found in the tantric art, and what do they represent in the Buddhist context and their development in terms of the historical context, as you just discussed.
I want to ask you, how many symbols are you aware of?
Not many.
And then I will take it forward.
Mhm.
So tell me, what are you aware of? And that will give us a good
I
perspective.
okay. So uh, for me, Buddhist art, it's pretty much revolves around the symbol of Buddha, and Buddha in its human form, or in different symbolic form as well. And yeah, like they have different meanings, iconographic meanings. And I am aware of
True.
mandala art, and yeah,
Yeah.
this is it. I have very limited knowledge of Buddhist art.
Okay, I'll add some more points to that knowledge. So, so we have Vajra. Vajra, is a thunderbolt, right? And it has many
Mhm.
prongs. So it's like, if I have to with a mudra, this is your Vajra. Okay, this is your Vajra. And along with that, you
Hmm.
have a Vajra and the Ghanta, which is Vajra is a thunderbolt, Ghanta is a bell. These are your stepping stones towards creating a symbolic or iconographic zone for tantric Buddhist art. Without these two elements, no tantric practice is it won't happen. So and so the idea of that, initially I mentioned the male female principle. So everything is very philosophically coded in Buddhism. So your Vajra is the seat of knowledge. That's where pure action lies. But that action, if you think of a thunderbolt, it has a symbolic value. You can hold it. All the deities are holding it. But the ghanta or the bell, the sound that the bell creates, it's
Hmm.
actually the way to perform an action. आपको bell को move करना है. Once you move the bell, it
Hmm.
makes a sound. So in a way, bell is the feminine principle which embodies a sound, a resonance, a vibration, right? Whereas the Vajra, which is the idea of thunderbolt, which is solid, unmovable, adamantine. There are many analogies to understand it. Is the way to operate the bell. Without the so the idea is that in tantric Buddhist practices, you keep the Vajra and then you keep the bell, and then you practice. So you are chanting, you are
Hmm.
meditating, and whether it is a mandala or a deity, you can go ahead with your particular practice with it. So a vajra and a bell together on top of the bell, in certain deities hands, they both are there together at the same level. So there is almost like a yin and yang. In the Chinese it is known as yin and yang, which is a
Hmm.
principle of equality. In Tibetan it's called yabyum, which is the same yin and yang, and the male and female principle and the coming together of these two elements. This is something called yugnad in Sanskritized, phraseology. So it's the coming
Hmm.
together of male and female elements that is the bedrock of tantric Buddhist practices. And usko aap chahe whether you try to explain it explain it through a deity, whether you try to explain it through a mudra or try to explain it through symbols, which is what you were asking, it all means the same. So your skull cap is again very important uh, medium that a practitioner made of animal or even human skull at times in very secretive, very esoteric practices. So, so it's a skull, and if you invert it, it is meant to hold something, right? So, and what will be there in a skull? Usually, you have your blood or brain. If you have to imagine human anatomy, or any kind of anatomy. So the idea is that the blood is again associated with a certain idea of passion that is not needed, a passion that is probably rising out of ignorance. Ignorance is again something that Buddha himself has taught since from day one, that don't follow ignorance, follow the right path. So whatever Buddha has taught in the Theravada phase has been heightened to a very methodological, very philosophical level in the Tantric Buddhist phase. And it is very difficult, it's very tedious. I'm not going to go into the nitty gritties, but we're talking of Ghanta, Vajra, a skull cap, then there is a scepter. Because if you are leading a prayer or a meditation, then you need to have a scepter with you in your hand. Then there is a dagger. A dagger is again used in a philosophical, metaphorical way to kill ignorance around you. So you could be holding a dagger is called purpu. So you could be holding a purpu if you go to if you go to Himachal or you go to Ladakh, you will have these different markets where they're selling Buddhist symbols and tools. So a dagger, you will always find a dagger in these shops, and its purpose is to purely serve the meditational aspect. You place a purpu in your hand and you meditate. So at that time of meditating, you are dispelling ignorance. It's not there to kill somebody, quote unquote, but it's the philosophical that you are looking at. So yeah, so there are many such symbols and ways to visualize tantric Buddhist art and practices.
Okay, so I would like to know, is it possible to practice Tantric Buddhist art without getting into chanting, meditating, and spirituality?
Yeah, you can become an academician.
No, I'm talking in terms of artist. Because then,
No,
then
as an
the
artist,
question, then,
yeah.
then the question of authenticity comes. Like, is it mere replicating, or does this mean something else, something authentic?
So now we're moving from philosophy ritualization to art, right?
Yes.
That's what you're saying, that as an artist, uh, so there are a lot of not a lot of a handful of few good texts written. These are ritual texts that are written many moons ago, around 6th 7th century onwards they were written. And these are ritual texts in which uh, how a prayer is to be conducted, that is written. What you are asking for is rather a more modern movement that we see
Yes.
in today's times. If you go to artist communities based in the mountainous regions in Himachal or Lahore, or even towards Ladakh or Sikkim side, there is a this slight disjuncture because these artists are not following a certain ritual aspect. So just say, like we have something called, when we speak of Hindu deities, we have something called Pran Pratishta, for bringing the deity alive in a stone sculpture or any kind of sculpture, or even in a painting, opening the eyes of the deity. So all of these elements are now done in tandem with a priest who is making sure that all the rituals are happening while the art aspect has been, you know, almost given over or taken away by the artists themselves. So if you are an artist, you want to, let's say,
Hmm.
make a painting of Tara, right? Tara, we know, is the goddess of compassion. And I am somebody who wants to commission a painting. My requirement is I just need that painting or a sculpture, right? It has to have certain
Hmm.
set of, performances that have to be taken care of before the deity is handed over to me. Both the parties, we will start making the painting. And every aspect of it, that first you make the outlines, or you make the outer body, and then you start working from bottom to top. Because top is where your head is, and that's where the height of your, wisdom lies, your intellectual capacity lies. So that's how you start building it up, and you leave the eyes blank. And in that, at that time, what you will do is you will call the monk, and the monk will literally bring the deity inside that painted image or that sculpture through set of ritual practice. And then you open the eyes. This is called opening the eyes. And once the eyes are open, the deity has arrived. And that's when, the painting or the artwork is ready. And you will give it to me, and I will again have another monk come up to me or to my house, and we will have another set of rituals to welcome the deity, and then it's business as usual. So again, you cannot remove ritual from material aspect of art, at least in Tantric Buddhism. Yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of art we are talking about, it is tantric in terms of the rituals and the spirituality and the meditation and all. But also, I would like to know, like, does it have some its own visual language, its own visual elements, that makes it tantric?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's very fascinating. Um, let's take the case of a Thanka. Thankas, like I said, some deities are going to be Somme, some uh, deities are going to have a more, Krodh aspect, attached to them. So the deities which are calm, they are the ones who need more deities who are more wrathful and have a lot of anger around them. More like, they're generals guarding the realm, guarding the territory around them. So in that case, what we are looking at a terrain and ecology which has beautiful streams of water gushing through mountains, cavernous spaces, very rich flora and fauna, almost like a paradise. So that's where the deity, the main deity, is sitting. One element is that around it, probably at the bottom of the thanka, you will have two to three very angry, very ferocious deities who are ready to chop off your head. The idea is and they will have this blazing aura of fire around them. Unlike Buddha, who has a very mellowed down golden halo, these guys have fire lightning. These weapons are meant to, protect the realm from any, evil coming their way. Now, what is that evil? That evil does not reside in you in person. That evil is the evil of ignorance. That evil is of ignorance that is there, maybe non-religious ignorance that is there due to not knowing what are your end goals of life, whether you're seeking emptiness, enlightenment, whatever it is. So your ecology of tantric Buddhist art also changes as per your iconography. Every deity has a different iconographic schema, and through this we can relate or correlate a wider context of tantric Buddhist art and ritual.
I'm sure it also has some regional variations.
Absolutely. If you have to look at, so in India, what we see in Tibet, what we see as Tibetan Buddhist art or Nepalese Buddhist art, or even Far East Asian Japanese art to some extent, is also inspired by Chinese and Japanese both. They're inspired by elements from Indian art and aesthetics. And Pal period, Pal Sena period from 8th 9th century onwards becomes a very interesting metaphor to see how appropriation of Buddhism is taking place, how Buddhism is becoming, Buddhist art or Tantric Buddhist art has a more pan Asian audience to it. So we have certain, the way Indian gods are with angular bodies, attenuated bodies. They have very sinuous, sensual sort of faces. So all of that also travels, and of course, you have dhotis, the gods in China, gods in Buddhist gods in China, Nepal, Tibet. They're wearing Indianized dhotis. They have a sash. They also have a yagyupavit. So and even the crowns, the prong crowns that are there during this period, they all are almost traveling, and one wonders if this is part and parcel of little gifts that the monks are taking with them, or diplomatic gifts that are being exchanged between kingdoms. So that's how art has traveled in the ancient times, and this is one of the best ways to look at it.
Could you suggest some books for our readers and our audience so that they can read more about tantric art and
Yeah,
that encourage them
absolutely.
to, yeah.
At, at the top of my head, of course, if you have to look at, I would definitely subscribe, ask the readers and listeners to subscribe to or buy Indian authors, because a lot of good writing has taken place. I'm not being biased here, but two of our stalwarts. One is Professor Lokesh Chandra, a great name in the Buddhist art and philosophy community. He's written at length on Buddhist iconography, Tibetan art, Nepalese art, even Southeast Asian art. So do check out his works on Tantric Buddhism and Tibetan art at best. The second person I recommend is Pratapaditya Pal, and he is the one who has single-handedly spearheaded Buddhist art collections in museums in America. And he has not just curated and crafted these collections, but he's brought out ominous volumes on it. So, as a student, as a researcher, or somebody who's an art aficionado, laying your hands on Pratapaditya Pal's books on Tibetan art, painting, looking at the very social religious context will really get you going. So it's definitely a good read. On Tibetan Buddhist sorry, not Tibetan, but on Tantric Buddhist philosophy, there is I think it's Ronald Jackson, if I'm right. So he's done a great work on the social history of Tantric movement. Donald or Ronald Jackson, I might be missing the name. Yeah, so these are some really good authors who have done. Otherwise, you have to look at it from the point of view of archaeology, and that just gets wide, because Central Asia has their set of archaeologists, India has their archaeologists, same goes for Nepal and ground.
Yeah, so we had so many things that we had discussed within this brief period of time, and we are running out of time, and we'll have to cut short our discussion here,
Yeah,
very unfortunately. And I would like to thank you so much for taking out time to participate into Abir Pothi's Tuesday talks. And yeah,
very much.